Okay, my friends, hey, what's up? Welcome back to Staying Strong for Marriages. If you're new, this is a YouTube channel dedicated to helping people go through marital separation, divorces, things like that are really kind of soul crushing. What I try to do is take a lot of Christian principles, a lot of public data and research, and try to help us figure out what can we do? How can we be successful in life? How can we be successful in marriage and family? You know, how big a deal is this with the kind of skyrocketing divorce rates, with the large number of men especially who are saying, man, we got to just get out of this whole marriage situation because it's such a raw deal for us guys. Some of the stuff with the alimony, child support, divorce court. So what I'm going to try to look at today is an article that has come under some fire, mostly because of its finding. It's called the Dunedin Multidisciplinary Health and Development Study. And one thing that I've found is that, well, this is put out or sponsored at least by the U.S. Department of Justice. And it was done in New Zealand. They started looking at young people when they were 1972 is when it started, 1972, 1973, and they tracked this cohort of people through a lot of different like early life experiences, and then what happened, ultimately asking them the questions of the experiences they had related to domestic violence. Now, the reason people don't like this study and why it had a lot of pushback when it first came out was that it did not at all live up to the standard narrative that we're told that men are the abusers across the board and women are always victims. I mean, it does really kind of lay out for us that that's not at all the case, that men and women often use very similar tactics, that the say like early life events are not the same for men and women. So we are different in that way when it leads to our susceptibility to being victims, as well as our potential, I suppose you could say, to being perpetrators. So I'm just going to read some of the highlights that I had, and we'll let you guys check it out. So the Dunedin Multidisciplinary Health and Development Study is a 21-year investigation of a representative birth cohort of infants born between April 1st, 1972 and March 31st, 1973 in Dunedin, a city of approximately 120,000 people on New Zealand's South Island. Moving on. They say when the study members turned 21 years old, which would be the 21st phase of the study, it said they were given questions about partner violence, which were embedded in a 15-minute standardized interview about intimate relationships. I'm going to read Exhibit 1 really quickly because I think it's interesting just for us to have a list of how they define physical and psychological abuse, and for us just to hear it, and maybe it'll ring true a little bit about either past or current relationships, things that are going on with us or that have gone on in the past. So, physical abuse scale. It says that participants were basically asked if in the last year they had experienced any of these. Physically twisting your partner's arm, pushed, grabbed, or shoved your partner, slapped your partner, physically forced your partner to have sex, shaken your partner, thrown or tried to throw your partner, thrown an object at your partner, choked or strangled your partner, kicked, bit, or hit your partner with a fist, hit or tried to hit your partner with something, beaten up your partner, threatened your partner with a knife or gun, used a knife or gun on your partner. Moving over to the psychological side, damaged a household item or some part of the home out of anger, deliberately disposed of or hidden an important item of your partner's, become very upset if dinner, housework, home repair work was not done, purposely damaged or destroyed your partner's clothes, car, or other, insulted or shamed your partner in front of others, locked your partner out of the house, told your partner that he or she could not work or study, tried to stop your partner from seeking or talking to friends or family, restricted your partner's use of car or telephone, made threats to leave, tried to turn family, friends, or children against your partner, ordered your partner around, frightened your partner, treated your partner like he or she was stupid, given in to your partner but planned revenge, ridiculed your partner, threatened to hit or throw something at your partner in anger, told your partner that he or she was ugly or unattractive, become abusive after using drugs or alcohol, thrown, smashed, hit, or kicked something during a disagreement. So, interesting list there. So the resulting high level of confidence in the data can be attributed to the fact that the interviews were conducted in a setting in which participants knew there was no risk of persecution or requirement to participate in a treatment program if they revealed abuse. Well, this is the part down here, Exhibit 2, where people kind of a little bit didn't like the results. So you can see you have 4 different colors. The first one, the dark, 1985, then 83, 93 to 94 with only married or cohabitating couples, and then 93 and 94 but married, cohabitating, and dating couples. And what we basically see is that the perpetration in every category on this left graph is higher for women and lower for men. So that's the thing that, it didn't go with the narrative that we always hear, and that's why people didn't like us. Then on the victimization side, in 3 out of the 4 categories, this one, and this one, men claim to be more frequently the victim. This one, dark 1985, it is. Bar shows that in this one section, the women claim to have more victimization. Now, this is just not what we usually hear. And I think, I guess I knew this guy that he felt that he had been in some domestic violence type of situations with his partner. He went and tried to find services for it, and honestly, there was no funding, there was no programs for men, there was no shelter for men. He actually got put into a group because the counselor believed that he was, I guess, being legit in his claims, but actually it was funded for women or whatever. So it's just, I think one part of the value of doing these videos is it helps all of us really realize that anybody can be a victim, anybody can be a perpetrator. And so we need to get rid of some of the gender stereotypes and just really take people at their word, realize that men and women are very similar in these actions. Let's check out Exhibit 3 because it's interesting. It's just talking about physical partner violence given the type of relationship. So just going dating, about 21% of the time this may happen. Cohabitation, 48% of the time were the reports, and then married couples, 41% of the time. So we see here, you have a pretty interesting thing when it comes to cohabitation. I don't know why that is, but that's what the data says. In the end, I'll probably leave in the end screen something for y'all about some studies I looked at from Arizona State and Washington University about the links between divorce and cohabitation, or divorce and multiple pre-marriage sexual partners, especially for women. It seems to be pretty significant. I'm going to move on here. This is, they spend some decent time looking at mental illness, but I'm going to go down here. So they have correlations of physical abuse with selected childhood and adolescent characteristics. So it's really interesting. A Y means, we can come down here and see, yes, it's a significant risk factor. And the double Y is significant and strong risk factor. The N is no risk. And so we can see here, this is interesting. One parent absent at age 9. This is a big deal for boys. And usually we know that, in separations and divorces, primarily the fathers are left out of the picture and the kids go to stay with the mother. So that's a big deal for kids, men or boys, I guess, at age 9. But then one parent absent at age 15, pretty much is a big deal for everybody. By the time you get 15, you need a mother and a father, is what this is saying. Then the parent-child attachment at age 15, this is especially important for female perpetrators. And if we go over here to the right, it says right here, parent-child attachment was measured when the sample members were age 15 with a 12-item self-report measure from the inventory of parent attachment. The items measured the adolescent's trust, communication, and alienation in their relationships with their parents. So if you're dating, if you're thinking about getting married, it's definitely worth doing some digging. And you can look right there for those 3 types of things when you go and meet the parents for the first time, when you go on that, weekend outing, when you hear those backstories about life, during your, say, partner's childhood. Look for these things. What was the trust level? How was the communication? And what was the alienation they felt with their mother or father? Did they feel a large degree of that? That's a big deal, especially for female perpetrators. So guys, if you're dating a woman, she has those, then your radar should really be up for any other types of abuse or controlling type of things that she's going to do to you. Educational achievements, this is a big thing, especially for boys leaving secondary school. And that makes a lot of sense from what, you hear people saying all the time that men have this burden of performance, that, women, they don't have that as much. But it's really upon guys to be breadwinners, to go out and achieve. And if they don't, they're not going to do well with women. Well, this seems to be a big deal for guys as far as becoming perpetrators, but also becoming victims. That maybe guys, I don't know, I don't want to speculate, but it's a bigger deal for guys than for women. Aggressive delinquency at age 15, and across the board, this is a double Y for everybody in both categories. So if you're with somebody and you know that they had aggressive behaviors before the age of 15, this is a huge red flag. And I would almost suggest, you go and find someone who doesn't have those characteristics. How to tell if someone has recovered fully from those events and are no longer going to act that way and aren't going to proceed down the normal path, then okay, that's one thing. But if you don't know how to read that, if you're not trained in psychology, say, I would really be careful. Substance abuse, this is a big deal for, juvenile police contact. This is a huge deal for women who end up being victims. And then again, across the board, substance abuse, age 15, men and women. So, if you're with someone who was using at age 14, 15, early on, that's a big problem. You gotta take note of that. You can't just blow that off and say, oh yeah, well that was like 10, 15 years ago. I'm gonna read these last little bits, these highlights. Adults involved in violence often remember their childhood in ways that provide self-justification for their current behavior. That's a big problem, right? You don't want people justifying it and what they're doing when they're abusing you. The pattern of results shows that male perpetrators' backgrounds include primary poverty and poor school achievement. In contrast, female perpetrators' backgrounds include primarily disturbed family relationships, especially weak attachment, harsh discipline, and conflict between parents. So again, those are things to look for. Really important things to look for. I'm going to skip to the bottom. This is kind of the one that it's just the written description of what we saw already in Exhibit 2. But as shown in Exhibit 2, women report perpetrating partner violence more frequently than men. This was true in the Dunedin study and in both the National Family Violence and National Youth Surveys. That's one that people just, like I said, they just did not like. The things that I heard was that, there was a ton of pressure for this report not to even be published, that it was very difficult for an academic journal to publish it, and that I think there were some people working at Harvard at some part of this study, and they really came under a lot of fire. So then it goes on to say, well, why do women seem to abuse more often? And it says, however, women know that they are unlikely to injure their partner, for one, 2, that he's unlikely to call for help, 2, and 3, that the police are unlikely to intervene. Thus, there is little to deter an angry young woman from hitting her partner. You have to remember in this study, everyone was 21 years old for the most part. This is one of the most worrisome findings from the Dunedin study, is that young adults most likely to be involved in partner violence are also most likely to be parents. And so that's basically it, you guys. That's a wrap. Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Thanks for stopping by the channel. If you have comments, stories, please share them. It's just for everyone that's good. Just to be clear, my goal isn't to enrage or to make the gender war any worse than it already is. But at the same time, I think that this is useful information and something that maybe we've been fed a little bit of false narrative along the way. I think this video is probably going to be the most used for young men or middle-aged men who may be living as victims, and there's just not a lot of voices out there talking about that aspect of life. Women on the other side, we probably hit the peak of the Me Too movement, and now a lot of those claims are starting to be called into question as illegitimate. But still, women are told very often and seem to be very well informed about their victimhood, while guys really aren't. So if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. Also, I'm going to leave 2 links to the videos. One that I did for Christians thinking about, should I divorce my abusive spouse? Because the Christian scriptures do speak about divorce, but it doesn't really include anything except for sexual immorality. So what are you going to do in that situation? The other thing I looked at is, how does cohabitation and previous sexual partners relate to divorce? Hope that helps. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks, bye.